Welcome, friends, it is I, LostScarf, and it's time for the Short Smite Beginner Guide to Chaac. That's right, the Stormcaller is here, and he's going to get everybody wet. Everybody. So, Chaac is a very tanky fighter who can cause a lot of trouble at the start as a caster, and later on you do him as a basic attacker. So what's going on here is we're doing a beginner guide, which means this is for beginners so that you can get comfortable understanding Chaac, so you can try him out and play him, and in the future you'll get good with him, hopefully. Now, advanced and expert players, there isn't much here that's probably going to be useful to you guys, but still, if you feel I left anything out, put it in the comments to help people who are not as good with Chaac to understand Chaac even better so they can do better with him. As always, you're going to go over his class, some of the roles you can play him in, tips and combos, his abilities, purchases for him, and then conclusions. So, let's get going. Class and roles. So Chaac is a warrior, so he's capable of taking a lot of punishment and dishing out a lot if you build for it, and they usually have a form of escape or CC. For the most part, a lot of warriors have something like that. Chaac is capable of teleporting with his axe, he can be more tanky with his spin, he can keep himself alive with his range because of the heal from it, and of course his ultimate is a big disrupting silence, which can also have a knock-up on it. So he's a pretty nice warrior. Now, when it comes to roles, beginner role is definitely the solo lane for Chaac, and you can play him patient or aggressive. A patient Chaac, I think, is the better way to play him at first to understand how Chaac works, and that's building pretty tank at the start, counter-building to your opponent, that way you don't get punished too much. You can do some damage as they're doing damage to you, you do some clearing, if they get over-aggressive you can maybe catch them then kill them, using an ult or something like that, or just set them up for a gank. Now, aggressive Chaac usually builds something like Heavy Hammer, so they can just beat things up. They use their rain a lot to heal up and stay alive. They also use spin to get some protections on them while they're dealing with the enemy god and minions. And you can eventually beat someone to death going as an aggressive Chaac because you're just hitting them so hard. So I say patient Chaac when you're first playing him, and then you can try expanding with aggressive Chaac. And as you get more comfortable with him, you can do whatever the heck you want. Now in team fights, he's really a walking ultimate in team fights for the most part. You can cause really good trouble with his ultimate because he can do the silence and a knock-up. Also though, you can throw your axe out and also put out your rain to slow the enemy in a big area. So he's pretty useful in team fights. Now for jungle, it's kind of the same thing. His clear is not that great at the start, like it's okay, but once you hit level 5 you can start ganking enemies. You can cause some really good ganks. As long as you're coordinated well with the lanes, you can cause a lot of kills because of the silence. That 3-second silence can really get somebody killed, so it's very helpful when you jump in and do some bad things to your enemies. And of course, teamfights, like I said before, Rain Dance can slow things down, and of course your ultimate can set things up for a big disruption in a team fight. So Chaac is always relevant. His damage does fall off later on in the game, so you want to build him more of a basic attacker later on so you can actually do damage, or get a lot of cooldown so you can do your silence every minute. Chaac's abilities. First up is his passive Overflow. After 5 successful basic attacks, Chaac's next ability costs no mana. This is why he's able to just stick around for a long time. It's very nice. First ability, Thunder Strike. He throws his axe out for an AoE attack. It stays on the ground for 5 seconds for other abilities. Second ability, Torrent. Chaac attacks in a circle around him. He gains protections for each enemy he hits, max 5 stacks, and for 4 seconds. So you want to hit a bunch of minions and gods if you can, so you get a lot of protections for the next 4 seconds to just beat things up and not take too much punishment. If the axe is out though, you'll teleport towards your axe and then do the spin there. And enemies you pass through on the way will take 50% of the damage from your torrent. His third ability is Rain Dance. This is an AoE that heals Chaac and slows enemies around him. If the axe is out, the AoE also appears there as well, so you can create a big area of slow for catching up to enemies or just keeping them in place. And lastly is his ultimate, Storm Call. This is a big AoE around Chaac that silences enemies for 3 seconds. When he's casting it, he takes 50% less damage, and he is CC immune during that time. Now, if the axe is in the area, when he does this, it does additional damage at the axe and also knocks up enemies, so you can do a really big team disruption with his ultimate if you set it up right. It's also not bad as an escape because of the damage reduction and also all the big silence, so you get 3 seconds to get out of there. Tips and combos. First up is his passive, and that is just have it ready as much as possible. That way you use less mana, which is just helpful because it lets you stay around longer. And the longer you're out there, the more destruction you can cause. Another tip is that axe can go through walls. You can throw it over a wall and you can teleport to it using torrent, so it's pretty useful to do that if you need to. Next one to do with torrent, that is, you want to get as many enemies as possible for maximum protection, that way you can just tank better. And it's just really nice to do that. Usually if you're fighting in minions, it's very easy to do that, but if you're fighting in a team fight, you want to just try to maximize that for more protection to survive longer. Next tip with Rain Dance is you want to Rain Dance often if you can. Just keep using your passive, beat up the jungle a little bit, or just minions to just keep using your passive on that. That way you're high on health, which will make you really hard to deal with at all times. Another one is, with Axe and Rain, you can create a big slow area for team fights. It's really nice that you put the Axe somewhere ahead of your enemies, and then you just use your Rain Dance, and then they're slowed there, and when you catch up, they're slowed by you. It's really nice. And lastly, Stormcall is great for disrupting teams for offense and defense. So like you're going into a big fight, you silence everyone, just cause a lot of trouble. Or your team needs to disengage, you can do a big ult to scare them off, and then you just get going. Now when it comes to combos though, I feel like there's 3 combos, but something to keep in mind is your Rain Dance, you can use it at any time during the combo, before or after, at any time, just because it's a slow that heals you, so you can use it as a heal, or for a slow and such like that. So the combos are 1-4-2, 2-1-4, and 1-2-4. The idea for 1-4-2 is you throw out the Axe to set up for maximum damage with the silence, so then you use the Torrent to do damage and gain protections, and then you're just beating people up at that point. Next combo, the 2-1-4 combo, is that you're getting protections from just hitting as much as you can. Then you do the 1-4 part for maximum damage from the ultimate and knock up and silence, and just cause trouble that way. And then lastly is 1-2-4, and that is you put out the Axe to teleport to your location, then do the silence. This is if you don't have Blink. If you're just need to get the silence in for your team, then you just got to get the teleport in, just do that, and just cause a lot of trouble. There is, of course, a bit of a startup time on the ultimate, which is why you have that defense buff and the CC immunity at the time. But that's really useful there as in a way of disrupting the enemy team as well, in that it makes them want to disengage. So if you need to do it as a defensive measure, it's not a bad idea to do it like that, which will just scare off the enemy team. Purchases for Chaac. Now, in my opinion, Chaac does some pretty good casting damage early in the match, and he's very tanky. But his problem is, late in the game, his casting damage is just not that strong, and he has to switch to a basic attack style to stay relevant. If not, he's just a walking tank that just slows and silences, which is not a bad thing to be, but it's not as useful as also being a basic attack threat. So I feel like you want to start out building tanky to be a bruiser, and then you start building some basic attack potential, so you can actually do some damage later on, so you can stay a threat. Now, as far as actives go, you can consider getting Weakening Curse. It's a useful active for slowing down the enemy with Rain Dance. Also, after your ultimate, they're going to be silenced for 3 seconds, so keeping them slow is helpful as well. Then, of course, Blink is great for surprise ults. That way you can save your axe for other means, or you can aim it closer. Like, you go in there, then do the axe, and then do your ult, just so you have a better shot at doing it better. There's other actives you can use with him, but I think those are 2 pretty good ones for him. And yeah, Bruiser, I feel, is just the way to go with Chaac. In conclusion, Chaac is a strong fighter that's capable of being an annoying threat all game, but he can fall off late if you don't plan correctly for him and build the right way. So you want to just think about what you're doing with him and how you're going to use him later on in the match so that you're always relevant the entire game, so that you can continue to rain down the storm on the enemy's parade. As always, this was a beginner guide. The idea here is to make you more comfortable with playing a god like Chaac. That's what the focus of all the guides are. Get people to want to play different gods so they can get comfortable with them, maybe even find that they really like this god and they get really good with it. The more gods people play, the more variety everyone has in their pocket of what they want to play, and that just makes it better for everyone, because then more people have more gods they're good at, so that we can just see more diversity in the game, which is a good thing. It's always good to see just a lot of different ideas come out and just a lot of things work. It's just nice. So spread it to your friends, show them this guy, show the other guides, so that more people just play more things. So there you go, that right there is the Chaac guide. Coming up next will either be Chang'e or Cupid, not sure yet which one it will be, but that should be a lot of fun to make. And there you go, I had fun making it, I hope you had fun watching it, and that's what's all about, isn't it? Having fun, thanks for coming by, and see you next time.